folks, David here on the Vintage Future once again. Hope everybody is doing really well. And today I want to talk about, is it okay to dress cosplay? To wear clothes that make you look like you're wearing a costume? Or is it not? A better way to put this, to just kind of expand the conversation a little bit, would be, how should you dress and why? So this is going to get really philosophical. I don't really have any formal conclusions about this, just so you know. So this is more just to get a conversation started. So comment below on what your thoughts are. So I'm giving you food for thought, okay? I'm not really giving you a fully synthesized, fully evolved argument, okay? But I woke up this morning thinking about this, and then I was talking to a friend who's in this hobby, and they sort of brought it up on their own, and I just thought, you know what? This is on my mind. I'm gonna throw it out to the internet community and just see what everybody thinks, okay? So I think if we're gonna talk about this, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to start where we all start. I'm not trying to be crass. I'm trying to be philosophical and say that who you really are is who you are naked, all right? So we're born naked. We're born without clothes. And so even though our personalities and our tastes are not fully developed at that point, I think you could say that as a baby, your identity is at its purest form, okay? It's not fully developed yet, but it is probably its core self at that point. That is our identity. So you don't need the clothes to have that identity. Like, you are you. And then let's look at you on the other end of your life. When you die, we don't necessarily die naked. That's not what I'm saying. But as a pastor, I have been involved with many memorial services. And so I've been to open casket funerals a lot. And one thing that's very apparent, and a thread that runs through all these experiences, are that no matter who the person is that you are celebrating the life of and saying goodbye to, when you see the open casket, you realize that the clothes they have on the cadaver are really kind of meaningless. They're less for the person and more for those looking on. It's because we, the living, would be uncomfortable seeing them the way that they are. But it's clear that the clothes to them are meaningless now. It doesn't matter anymore. And even the body they leave behind is a shell. And it's not the true person, because what really is them is their soul, their spirit, their personality, right? We are all very aware that this body that we're looking at is not the real them, that the real them has left its shell, quote unquote. You know, despite whatever worldview you might ascribe to, or the terms you want to use. I'm using imperfect terms to describe the really sacred moment and event that we all are aware of at some level, right? We all kind of know that, like, my loved one's not here anymore in the way that they were. The real part of them, the truest part of them, has gone on, right? So backtracking to clothes, for those who are living, it's not really about the clothes, is it? That's not who you are. Like, you can walk around talking about, this guy's cool, that lady's cool, they look good, they look attractive, they look sexy, they look put together, and all this and that and the other. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, really, that's not us. It's all a big facade, right? It's like, oh, this person's super cool. Well, no, who they really are is who they are naked, okay? So, like, and I'm not talking about sexuality here, okay? So again, not trying to, I'm staying philosophical, okay? So it's like, there's this skin put on the skin that they have, and we call that skin clothing. And it can change people's perspective of you. It can change your perspective of yourself. And sometimes it's an expression of who you are. Sometimes, though, it could be an expression of a bazillion other things. And one of those things could actually be you yearning for someone that you're not. Maybe it's even yearning for someone you never will be. And so there are so many valid and invalid reasons we could put on the clothes we're putting on. I think that sometimes it's you crying out for acceptance, or maybe you're trying to align with a certain group of people that aren't going to accept you, and you're trying to be liked or something like that. So there's a lot of good things that come from clothing, and there's a lot of things that maybe aren't healthy that come from clothing. And it's not all one or the other. It's a mixed bag. It's a very complex issue. There's so many nuances to it. And so any statement, I think, that kind of hastily generalizes is just short-sighted, shallow, and myopic, right? So let's also think about how we get this perception of cool or not cool, or in style, out of style. A lot of it has to do with where we live, right? If you go to the other side of the world, obviously things are going to be different, but you could even drive a couple hours away and things will be different. So two of my experiences, which kind of illustrate this, are one, I've traveled extensively and I've been to most of these continents on planet Earth. And so, like when I was in Zambia, Africa, you show up in Lusaka, and how do people know that you're different? Aside from the fact that I clearly am of Caucasian and Asian descent, right? Well, it's my clothing. They know that I'm not from around there. And at best, it can be, hey, welcome. Obviously, you're not from around here, but let's show you around. And at worst, there could be some prejudice toward me because I'm clearly not one of them, because I don't dress the same, right? I don't have the same customs. So whether it's Lusaka, Zambia, or Manila, Philippines, or Phnom Penh, Cambodia, or any of the other places that I've been, that's kind of how it is, and we all are aware of that. Or I could drive like an hour and a half over the hills to the next valley over. I live in Silicon Valley, California. It's the tech center of the world. And so people dress a certain way. They dress like you would dress if you worked at Google or Samsung or Apple, right? And so if I just go an hour and a half away from here, though, I could go to Santa Cruz, California, right on the coast, who has this really like surfer, hippie, artistic vibe, really kind of just like raw and really cool. It's a great vibe, but it's very Santa Cruz, and there's really nothing quite like it on the planet. Or I could go the opposite direction over to the Central Valley, as we call it. It's kind of like the Dust Bowl of Central California, you know, like a lot of agriculture is over there, and in the summertime it's just like wicked hot and dusty. And over there, let's just put it this way, the pickup trucks actually have dirt on them, okay? People dress in workwear clothing because that's what they do for a living. Like, they have overalls, they've got jeans, they've got, you know, denim jackets and Carhartt jackets and hunting jackets and all this stuff because that's their life. They've actually hucked hay bales. They don't just watch that stuff in the movies. This is their life, you know? So even just an hour and a half away from me, you're going to dress a certain way and people are going to know you by that. And you're going to be known within the community that way. You know, unless, of course, you're someone that lives there and you commute over the hill into the Bay Area. In which case, you're going to actually usually dress a little bit more like the people in the Bay Area. Or I could go up to Oakland in San Francisco, where style is a lot more diverse. And you are accepted not on the basis of fitting in, but fitting out. Right? Standing out. That's kind of the name of the game in like Oakland and San Francisco. And so you are trying to kind of push the envelope. You're trying to push the limits of what other people think of as style and express yourself in all sorts of new ways, because you're not in a small rural town anymore where everyone's basically the same. You are now in Oakland or San Francisco or Berkeley, California. So it's important to realize that whatever we think of as style or valid or legitimate as far as the clothes you wear go, if that's all we think of it as, it is really closed-minded, because we live in a big world, and even just an hour away from you, people's concept of style might be completely different. And so I'm talking about all this to talk about how it's super, super subjective. And so it doesn't really matter what you wear, because there's always going to be someone else in the world that aligns with you. And so I do think, yes, it comes across as a bit odd for people like us. Like today, I'm wearing double denim, right? That looks a little weird to a lot of people. Or if you're one of the really big repro people and you're literally wearing something that's like a period accurate costume from the 1930s, head to toe, you know, that does look odd. But I think that's okay as long as you know what you're getting into. As long as you know that people's first impression of you is not going to necessarily be a positive one. The same could be said, though, of fitting in. Like if you just wear what everyone else wears, what you gain is people don't have a weird first impression of you. They think, oh, that person, quote unquote, fits in. But what's the downside? You've completely lost your individuality as far as style goes, because you're not doing anything that's an original thought to you. You're not pushing the limits. You're, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I'm not jabbing at you, but I'm just saying you are intentionally being what people would call cookie cutter, right? You are not advancing. You are not innovating. You are taking orders from the collective. It's like, what should I wear? You know, forget about these things I want to wear. I can't wear it because I'm only going to wear what the collective says I should wear, what I'm allowed to wear, what's considered acceptable. So I think one thing that should be said, though, is I've interacted with people on both sides. I've actually lived on both sides of that line, in both extremes, in different iterations of my style, different periods of my life. And I will say that first impressions are one thing, but once you get to know people, it all kind of goes out the window. Because really what people love you for is you. So no matter who someone is and how they dress, or who I am and how I dress, if you have a real human connection with them and have an actual conversation, you kind of throw all that out the window. And people are just people. And if someone's unpleasant, then they just suck all around. It doesn't matter what they wear. And if they're a great person, then even though at first you might have been like, oh, that's weird, they dress like they're out of the 1930s. Or if you say you're the person that's very stylistic, you look at them and you're like, oh, that's weird, they're super cookie cutter and they seem to have no personality. As soon as you start talking to them and have a real human connection, 99% of the time you're like, oh no, forget all that I thought about them before. This person is amazing. I'm having so much fun talking to them. They're very deep. They're adding to my life. I'm adding to theirs. It's mutual. This is a really worthwhile use of my time. So where will most people end up? I think most people, the answer is dress in the middle, okay? So you want to do enough to stand out, but you also want to do enough to relate to people. Like there is something valuable about kind of connecting with the culture that you live in, as long as it's a good culture. That can go too far. For instance, Nazi Germany in the 1930s, like you're trying to go along with what people are wearing now, what they're believing, and next thing you know, you're caught up in this whole Nazi take over the world, go genocidal on certain people groups thing. That's not cool, right? So that can have this bad extreme, but it doesn't mean it's all bad. Like there is something valuable about aligning with your family if you have a healthy family, or aligning with your culture if you have a healthy culture, aligning with your workplace, aligning with all these things, because they're not just clothes we wear. These clothes represent ideals. They represent values and convictions. And if where a certain group of people is headed is a good direction, I think it's good to align with that to a certain extent, you know? And I think we all want belonging from birth. Like, I don't think that's weird at all. I think there's probably nothing more human than wanting this sense of belonging, that we're not created to be like this lone, autonomous person that has no connections with anyone else, but that we're all supposed to kind of be together. I mean, that's how humanity has gotten where it is to this day with technology and all sorts of other things, is because we have done it together. And even though we give the credit to certain innovators and inventors, you can't ever give all the credit to one person, because they needed other people to help them make those dreams into reality, right? And so I think connecting with other people through style is really important, whether that's people different from you or people that are the same as you. However, you don't want to completely jettison personal, individual creativity. And so while I'm not saying you should go all the way toward cosplay, I definitely think you should think about, I think you should think about expressing yourself a bit more, instead of just being like, okay, what's in now? Oh, Levi 511s? That's what I need to wear? Okay, yes, sir, I'll wear it. No, I think you should be like, well, what do I want to wear? Maybe I like wide fit jeans. Maybe I like super skinny jeans. I don't know what it is, but don't do it because it's a trend. Do it because you like it and it's this expression. Because if you care about clothes anyways, I think this is one of the many ways that we are called on to employ our creativity. But what this also means is that if you want to live in one of the extremes, it's completely valid. If you want to do the cosplay thing, I think it really is valid, as long as you know what you're getting into. And if you want to just go along with what everyone else is doing, do that too. But I would encourage you not to do it because of shame and fear and anxiety, but just to do it because maybe that's what's practical for you. But whatever you do, whether it's extreme or not, just do it knowing what you're getting into. So what does this mean as far as hot topics or controversial issues? The classic ones, are always going to be like what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing double denim. Like, that's controversial right now anyways. On both sides of the line, what cut of jeans you wear is going to be controversial. If you wear wide leg jeans or whatever, a lot of the people, like where I live, people are still wearing a lot of slim stuff. Again, Levi 511 kind of stuff. And so my coworkers, my friends, they all comment from time to time on like, I'm not even wearing jeans that wide, honestly. It's just a 9-inch leg. So people are like, dude, your jeans are huge. Like, what are you doing? And then if you're more in the heritage crowd, then it'd be the opposite. It's like, whoa, dude, why are you wearing jeans that look like they're painted onto you? But that's controversial. Outsourcing is controversial. Which country it is made in is going to be controversial. Color coordination can be controversial, like which colors go together, or should you dress with super loud, bright colors, or should you mainly stick with like understated colors? I think any art is subjective by nature because that's kind of what makes it art. And so anything that's art, anything that's subjective is naturally going to breed controversy. I do music for a living, and I've been playing music for over 20 years, and I can tell you, like, the beauty of music is its diversity, and the controversy of music is its diversity. And you can't have one without the other. Music would stop being beautiful if it wasn't so diverse and controversial. And so style is exactly the same. So here's how I would challenge all of you. Form opinions for sure. I think that's healthy in any field. A field with no opinions is a field that never changes. Don't just do what you're told. Think about it, analyze, have this critical thought process. But also learn not to criticize until you've really studied the situation, because I think a lot of criticism is unfounded and hasty. And again, as I said earlier, a little probably shallow and myopic, because you can't even like make an argument that doesn't indict you. Okay, so in someone's like, so let's just call it an 80-year lifespan. I don't know how long everyone's going to live, but let's just say it's 80 years. How many style iterations does your average person go through? Someone that really cares about clothes, what, like 15, 20, 30, 50? It could be a lot. And at any given point in time, you're going to act like you've reached the top of the Mount Everest of style. Like, I've arrived, I figured it out, I cracked the code, this is the real deal, this is how you do it. And in doing that, you're gonna like indict your past self or people who dress differently than you. But I would ask you at year 80, looking back on 30 different style iterations, which version of you was valid? Which version of you was legitimate? Because at every version of you, you were criticizing every other version of you. And then every time you reached a new version of you, you were like, oh, this is the stuff. I've arrived. This is the deal. This is what I should always have been doing. But then it changes again in 10 years, and then changes again in another 5 years, and then in another 10 years. And so it just shows how silly it can be if we're too dogmatic. It's like, well, no, like you don't even live up to your own standards, much less anyone else's standards. And as we saw earlier, talking about how style is different across the world and geographically and every like time and space and era in history, it's like very obvious. This stuff is super, super fluid and subjective and nuanced. So I think the discussions are fun, but when we make it a little too dogmatic, then I think maybe we're missing the point. So anyways, I don't have much else to say than that. Let me know what you think, because again, I just think that this would be a really cool discussion. And where I landed on this morning was simply dress how you love. Like do it because you enjoy it. Let your things take you places more important than the things themselves. We'll see you next time.